what's interesting is that the connection to the infinity, right, by listening, it comes from the empty vessel, comes from being humble and listening to the voice. Because with so much noise in the world today, where nobody's listening to one another, right, the opportunity for someone who is willing to listen and have that humility and that empty vessel, listening to other people, but most importantly, listening to yourself, turning down the scroll on social media and just taking those moments of meditation and emptying the vessel and listening to the internal voice. I think that's the key. I mean, to business, but most importantly, to happiness.
Data is your compass in e-commerce, but only if you know how to read it. Pinny Gniwisch, my guest on today's show, spent over a decade building Ice.com into a revolutionary force in online jewelry sales. As founder and EVP of Business Development, he helped transform how consumers buy jewelry and shape the evolution of modern e-commerce itself. He served on the board of Shop.org, consulted for Cirque du Soleil, and currently leads business strategy at Delmar International. In our conversation, Pinny shares the real story behind Ice.com's journey, from dot-com bubble survivor to $75 million success. We discuss his transition from Rabbi to internet marketer and what those worlds have in common. He explains why listening to data beats following trends, and how his team turned around a failing product launch in 24 hours by examining impression metrics, and why gut instinct remains as critical as artificial intelligence. Pinny breaks down the difference between customer acquisition and customer retention, why influencer culture burns out, and how Kabbalah principles apply directly to business decisions. We explore the concept of business as a spiritual practice, the dangers of the slippery slope in deception, and why humility creates space for that still small voice that guides the best decisions. So without any further ado, on with the show. Pinny, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's so great to be here. Thank you.
So let's talk about how we know each other. It goes way, way back, and what you were up to back then, and how that has changed so dramatically to what you're doing now. Like back in the day, over a decade and a half ago, I think, when we met, you were a board member of Shop.org. You were a speaker there. I also was a speaker. And we met in the conference circuit. You also would go to like Internet Retailer and other conferences for e-commerce, and we keep seeing each other, and we became friends. You were a professor back then as well, but you had Ice.com as your main gig, and everyone in e-commerce knew about Ice.com. It was just a shining star, a great example of how to do things right in terms of e-commerce and in terms of building a brand and building customer loyalty, doing great internet marketing, etc. So you're in a bit of a different spot now. What happened? Let's talk about what got you to where I just kind of described, and then where you went after that.
So, I think, in the beginning of the internet, 1999, when everything else was starting, you had Amazon, you had a few other e-commerce sites. We decided that the best product to sell online was jewelry. So you have small boxes, cheap shipping, great margins until recently. But, in 1999, you were the first player online. You had the ability to spend money on marketing, test, learn, and create the rule book for the future of e-commerce. And meeting you at all the conferences, knowing the sort of the guru of SEO, for me, it was an honor. I mean, I remember very clearly of us going to this kosher place in Australia, or was South Africa, somewhere remote.
Yeah, I think it was Australia. Yeah.
It was Australia. Yeah. I remember that. And it was like, I was turning to the other speakers. I'm saying like, who wants to come eat? And you were like, I'll come. And, so for me, that was very touching and moving to get to know people, on a personal level in that professional setting. And I think that's what sets you apart from a lot of the people that were involved in that time. But back to our business, so we launched our business in 1999. We got funding from a company called Idea Lab, which at that time founded the sort of the precursor to Google. They founded Click. They're the inventors of the whole pay-per-click.
Yeah, it was Overture. Was it called GoTo at one point, I think?
Could be.
Yeah, GoTo, and then the Overture, and then that got bought. Did it get bought by Yahoo, or was it?
I think so. I think it was Yahoo.
Yeah, Bill Gross, the founder of Idea Lab.
Exactly. So Bill Gross invested in us. We sent him an email, code email, saying we're a jeweler, started in Canada. We were buyjewel.com at that time. We did this really unique campaign where we had the banner that said free pearl necklace, and then on the bottom corner it just said $4.95 shipping and handling. And in our belief, in 1999, the biggest sort of hesitation for people shopping online was giving the credit card. But if they were paying for shipping and handling, our theory was, which worked, that they wouldn't think about that they're giving their credit card online. And we launched the campaign, and within 2 days, we had 125,000 signups or pearl necklaces given away. So when we came to Bill Gross with 125,000 customers, and in those days, it was all about eyeballs. So he was very excited and he invested in us. And then, fast forward 2 years, the dot-com bubble, we were part of this whole idea that Bill Gross had to compete with Amazon. So he bought a bunch of companies for $800 million. And he was going to put them all under one umbrella, calling it big.com. It didn't work. The dot-com bubble burst. We ran away from Idea Lab with our tails between our legs, and we came back to Canada and rebuilt ice.com. And the rest is history. We used our direct marketing knowledge. We learned about email marketing, we learned about conversion rates, and we learned about SEO and all those things that we would speak about over dinner over the 15 years, until we eventually sold ice.com to an investment firm out of Seattle. We grew our business to 75 million. So it was a great ride, and lots of knowledge and trial and error, but I'm glad that we're still friends.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you had a relatively successful exit. And I guess in the kind of scheme of things, how does that what were the lessons and maybe the regrets or do-over opportunities if you look back at the three different liquidity events with ice.com?
Well, I think lesson number one was when we brought in the biggest chunk of money, they wanted us to change our business model and to go, we were very data driven, but they wanted growth. So they brought in a much more tenured CMO, and they started to do commercials and things that we never thought had the ROI in the stage we were in the business based on our brand. So they spent a lot of money over a very short period of time and brought in new ways of doing business. So by us, the beauty of, what I've learned is that the beauty of the web is it's all about being able to see where the click goes and where the conversion is and how does that back into cost per acquisition and ROI. And today they call it the ROAS model. But in the early days, we just, we were very, very religious about it. And so my first sort of learning was that, people who came from traditional advertising didn't have the sensitivity or the knowledge of how online marketing works. And I was humbled by this big person coming into the business, me being my background as a rabbi, going into digital marketing, him not having any experience in digital marketing, and then him, sort of messing up, overspending, depleting our sort of bank of money in marketing based on his previous knowledge. So my first lesson was traditional versus digital there's not always a crossover. The second lesson we learned was that we were very humble in the beginning. So right in the beginning, because we had nothing, we were willing to take whatever they were going to give us based on the fact that we didn't believe in ourselves. And I think a great lesson for someone starting a business, yes, money is important, but knowing the value of what you have is very, very, it's integral to, to getting what you need in the future. Those are two important, maybe other things will come up, but that's just off the cuff.
Yeah, thank you. And how was it to go from Rabbi to internet marketer? It's an interesting career transition.
Well, I think sometimes I think about it. I think rabbis are similar to people who sell gifts to a demographic that doesn't buy the gifts for themselves. So we sell to men who buy it for women, and it's almost like a foreign thing for them. Will they get it right? Will they not? When I would stand up in front of the community and speak, right? You're speaking to someone who doesn't necessarily want to be there because they're coming in the high holidays when they have to be there. So I found like I'm selling a product that I need to make it more palatable to someone who I don't see often. When our selling days are Christmas and Valentine's Day, the two times a year when someone buys a gift when they don't necessarily want to be there, so to speak. So I found that there was some similarities in what I was doing. I was selling something not necessarily the person wanted to buy, but I was lucky that I came into the industry at the time that I did, because nobody knew anything, or nobody was an expert. And if you were a bit smart and you did the research and you tested and you learned from your testing and it wasn't just in the air, then you could become an expert. And that was the beauty. And that's why, when I look at people who are diving into AI, AI today is what digital marketing was when we started. And if you just dive in and learn, you can become the expert that everybody's looking to. Now, if I was a little younger and I had more energy, I would be that person. But I have a nephew who's really into AI, and he's utilizing it in our business and selling his services to other people based on his expert. I don't know how long this is going to last, the expert level of people in AI as tools become more simplified. But we were in the beginning of the internet, and it's interesting. We just finished Cyber Monday yesterday, and I remember as a board member of NRF, I was in the room when the NRF came up with Cyber Monday. I was there. We voted on it. I was one of the people. We came up with the idea. It was like, yes, the digital world needs a holiday just like Black Friday. And so when you're at the beginning, you don't have to have the baggage and the sort of know-how that comes with going to college and getting the degree and having the experience of offline marketing when this was such a new thing, and you could become the guy. And that's what I feel so blessed that I was there at that time.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you remember who had the idea for Cyber Monday out of the board group?
And that's a great question. I'm sure a lot of people in the room take credit. So I have no idea. I have no idea. I really don't. It could have been, I don't know. Maybe Ruben, or I don't know. The truth is, I don't remember. It was 25 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So how long were you on NRF's and shop.org's board?
I was there for I think 8 years.
That's a good run. It's a really good run. What's the highlight? What's the best thing that came out of that? So that time investment and the energy investment.
The people that were there were so smart and so innovative and so humble. Every person on the board had leadership positions in the biggest companies. You had people from Cole Haan, Saks Fifth Avenue. I mean, these were in the beginning of Walmart, Costco. I mean, you had big people there, and Gap. Who else was there? You had eBags, and these were companies that were starting, and they were doing hundreds of millions, and we would sit together, and it would just be a group of people who had shared interests. You can open your heart, share your successes, not worry about someone taking ideas and making their own, and everybody was open, and it was almost like we were pioneers, and we were in it together to make the future happen. And we see today that I think I saw yesterday's Amazon numbers that 65% of sales on Black Friday, Cyber Monday was online. So the shift is happening.
Yeah, really cool. So you mentioned eBags. Was it Peter Cobb who was on the board? Yeah. Was Seth Greenberg on the board?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. I had him on this podcast a few years ago.
And now he's like the guy.
Oh, in what way?
Because he sort of took his knowledge and extended it in the consulting realm and ran with it. And he stayed current with all the latest developments, and he became sort of a source of information of anything that's happening. I think he even has a newsletter that's very popular. So, there are certain people that lived it and then didn't only stay in their position, but extended their knowledge. And I think that's where I sort of lost it. When we sold ICE.com, I sort of left the industry for a little bit. But I think, I think this podcast will bring me back.
I think you have so many years of wisdom and experience that you can bring to. It's just like timeless wisdom that you can bring to any organization. Whether it's Cirque du Soleil, like you're consulting with them, or whoever else. I mean, it's these tried and true tactics and strategies about building rapport, relatedness, building those lifetime relationships that turn into customer lifetime value. That's timeless. Yeah, AI is the thing that everybody talks about, and you still have to run a real business that makes revenue and profit, that has happy customers, referable customers, and you've done an incredible job. So what would be some things that you'd want our listener to understand that is still tried and true and very important in this new AI era?
That data doesn't lie. And what I mean by that is a great example. We have a customer in New York, big department store, and they just did a purchase from us for 2,000 pieces of an item that I believe would do extremely well. And we had a call yesterday with them, and they were panicking. They didn't sell any. And it's already Black Friday, Cyber Monday. What's going on? Can we give them a discount? Can they discount it? And I asked them, do you know if anybody saw the item, right? You bought all this product. What are you doing because I've been searching your website. I don't see it anywhere. And I said to my people, you know what? We have the ability to advertise on their website. Let's take this product and let's push it up to the front. And overnight, we sold 200 pieces. From the phone call at 4:00 till this morning, we sold 200 pieces. And I called her this morning. I go, your customer is responding. You just never showed it to your customer. So, I mean, yes, it's in this. Imagine like you left it in the warehouse and you didn't put it on the sales floor. I mean, you're not going to sell anything, even if it's the best product. So data doesn't lie, right? Send me how many impressions this item got. How many clicks did this item get and how many conversions? And then I'll tell you if it's a good item. But if you have no impressions, how are you going to sell? So I think the number one thing is AI can help us in optimizing our marketing, or it can optimize our analytics. It can give us insight that we couldn't get before at faster pace. But at the end of the day, data is going to be the answer. And that's the beauty of being digital. And I was talking to a traditional, merchandiser that didn't look at the data, right? So I can't help you, right? But I can try by showing you that if I do put it in front of the customer will buy. And here's the data. So number one, data doesn't lie. Number two, the things that worked until now will work in the future. AI is not going to replace those things. So your gut feeling is as important as the technology you're going to use with AI. Yes, you're going to test with AI many different variations, but as a marketer, the success you've had based on all the rules that you've learned over the years are still there, and you still need to use them. So by reading other people's successes will help you to implement. Yes, AI has a lot of this information, but you still need that gut, that feeling that says, this product is going to sell. That. Yes, AI doesn't tell you that yet because they don't have the data, or the data doesn't tell you that, but it's there. I think those are two important lessons.
Yeah, well, let's double click on that second point, that your gut feelings are as important as AI. I'd say it's more important. Personally, I think it's incredibly important. It is the difference maker, because your gut feelings, or your intuition, is your connection to your higher power, your connection to God, to Hashem. So if you want a superpower, it wouldn't be AI, it would be to be able to see around corners, and that's intuition. So some would refer to it as the Holy Spirit. And if you can connect to that infinite intelligence, the all that is, and that guides you to not do a business deal that on the surface looks like a no-brainer, like it's just going to print money for you, and then you ignore your intuition and do it anyways, and it blows up in your face. You ignored your intuition. You ignore that still small voice.
100%. And what's interesting is that the connection to the infinity, right? By listening, it comes from the empty vessel, comes from being humble and listening to the voice. Because with so much noise in the world today, where nobody's listening to one another, right? The opportunity for someone who is willing to listen and have that humility and that empty vessel, listening to other people, but most importantly, listening to yourself, turning down the scroll on social media and just taking those moments of meditation and emptying the vessel and listening to the internal voice. I think that's the key. I mean, to business, but most importantly, to happiness.
Yeah, to everything, to life. So we got a lot of monkey mind chatter happening, and then I'm saying we just kind of collectively, we're so overstimulated with not just social media, but podcasts. And here we're recording one to add to the noise. But, it's just you could have 24/7 learning. And when you learn, you're not teaching. I mean, it's not to say that you shouldn't be learning, but when it's learn and be a student all the time, you're not stepping up as a teacher. You're not stepping up in a way to be a leader. You're just consuming. You got to be a producer. So I think that's important what you said about humility. It's not ego-driven producer like, oh, I got to be an influencer and I need these many subscribers on my YouTube channel in order to feel important and successful. No, this is just about following the guidance, that internal GPS that we talked about, the intuition. And if it's YouTube or it's a podcast or whatever it is to focus on so that you can be a producer, a creator, not just a consumer, go with it. And if you're filling all of your empty moments with content, then you're not living an examined life, right? So what is the quote? Unexamined life is not worth living, something like that. You know that quote?
I don't, but maybe in a different language.
Yeah, it was from Socrates. Here it is. So the unexamined life is not worth living.
And I think that's a very important point that you're making, because being a student and not a teacher, right? Yes, in certain times of your life, you need to be a student. You need to have the humility to download. And I remember telling my two boys when they went away to study in college, I said to them, these next 3 years, you're downloading, right? I want you to download. I want you to have that humility. I want you to get as much information. But if we don't step up to the plate, like the rabbis tell us, if there's no one there, if there's no man available, step up and be the man. If you're not going to imbue the next generation with the knowledge that you have, you're not going to step up. That's selfish, right? But more importantly, it helps you reflect on what you really know, because the student will challenge you. I started giving a class 3 times a week to different kinds of people on subjects that have to do with mysticism, with Kabbalah, and I have to prepare for these classes. And then after I prepare for the class, I have to give it. And when I give it, I go back and I have to prepare again, because I get so challenged. They really push back and make me a better person in the topic, because now I understand it. I have to understand it better and deeper. So we sort of sharpen the blade, or we refine the vessel, or whatever words you want to use, when we step up and we allow ourselves to be viewed and challenged. And it takes bravery, but on the other hand, it allows us to become a deeper and get to the core of what the idea is.
Yeah, I'm curious what you mentioned Kabbalah. I'm a big student of Kabbalah, and I love Kabbalah. It's so applicable to everything in life, and it's like ancient personal development. And I'm curious how you apply Kabbalah and just in general Judaism to business, and besides what we just talked about in terms of the empty vessel and humility and stepping up to be the teacher and to lead and so forth. Like what are some other lessons and wisdom nuggets that you'd like to share about Kabbalah and Judaism in a business and marketing context?
So I think one of the things that I'm working with now is this idea of the internal emotions and the external emotions. So the Kabbalah explains that we all have our classic 10 emotions, 7 emotions and 3 intellect. But these are what we're working with internally. And then we have our garments that we wear, which is thought, speech, and action. Now, we could have a feeling of love, and how we express that feeling is with the 3 garments, right? We can have a feeling of fear that gets expressed with thought, speech, and action. And one of the things that I'm working with is this idea that our thought, speech, and action is something that we have full control over. Our emotions, we don't. But our thought, speech, and action are something that we're in control. And when we control that, right, we have the ability to be that upstanding man, right, as versus the animal, where his heart and his mind are equal, meaning he's very instinctual. As a human being, we have the ability to have our head above our heart, that our mind can control our heart to the extent in our garments, not in the essence of what our heart feels. And that has been an interesting thing when it comes to business, right? You're working with your employees, right? You have this like really raging, whatever it is going on. And you sort of say, okay, my thought, speech, and action, how I express myself, that I can control, right? What's going on inside, not so much. Maybe I'm not as refined as I thought I was. And that's the key, I think, to this, to the growth that you can have both internally in your home and also in business, where how you relate to people. Honesty, right? Honesty is one of the places where, according to Kabbalah, where the sitra achar, which is the other side, acts as a parasite. It sort of gets its life from deception.
When you say the other side, you don't mean like death or the heavens. You actually mean the evil inclination, the opponent.
Correct. The opponent. Exactly. The one that's wants you to be more instinctual. And it sort of receives its life from things as deception, lies, stuff like that. And that's where it lives. So that's where it grows. That's where it gets its life force. And it builds upon that. And in business, we have this on a day-to-day basis where we can do the right thing, the honest thing, or, what Kant said, the slippery slope, right? And that's where you always can ask yourself, right? Am I allowing the sitra achar, the other side, to attach itself and get life, or I'm going to do the right thing? So these are all things that sort of create a more real spiritual existence in your physical day-to-day of whatever decisions that are super mundane.
Right. So business is a spiritual game, but from outward appearances, it may not look like it. It's just that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. There's the consequence for all sketchy behaviors, like, oh, you know what, I'm going to overcharge for this item, and the client will never know the difference or whatever. And that comes back to bite you, and it may come back in a way that you can't really make any correlation between that negative action that you took and the reaction or the consequence that might be years into the future and in a different context.
Correct. But I'm even talking not from an action to consequence. I'm talking about the action itself, meaning not the consequence of the action down the road. I'm talking about in the immediate second of the action, there's the consequence, right? The consequence is and it doesn't have to be visible. It's there already, right? You're giving life to the sitra achar, and it'll affect not your business world necessarily. It'll affect everything, right? The stink will be in everything you do.
So I understand from studying Kabbalah and Judaism that negative actions that we take actually create negative angels. Like you might say something, I don't know, some evil speech, right? Say some gossip about somebody. And in that moment, you're actually creating a negative angel that is going to hang around and create mischief in your life, in your business, in your relationships, etc., perhaps in your health. And we create all these negative angels through these actions throughout our whole life, and they accumulate. And then you ask for forgiveness, and you get, I guess, some of this undone. But if you don't know to do that, then you've got you're carrying a heavy load on your back, and you don't even realize it.
Correct. So that's what I mean. Like right away, there's the consequence. But in essence, I think the message isn't about the consequence. I think the message is about connection, right? Do you want to be connected with truth? Like, where do you want to associate yourself and your being, right? I'm talking from the love side, right? Like, how do you want to associate? Where do you want to receive energy from the front or from the back, right? Where do you want to see yourself? How do you visualize as a third eye your existence, right? Do I want to receive blessing from an open vessel in a forward sense, or do I want to receive blessing in a different way? And I think that's it's two sides of the same coin, right? Yes, there's a consequence, but I think the more important thing is I'm not using the word reward, but just, how do you want to view yourself, right? What light do you want to sit under?
Yeah. One of my favorite examples of somebody who's just really exemplary in the business world in following just the integrous way is Don Gurmezian. Do you know who this is?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
Do you want to talk a little bit about him?
So he's a Canadian.
As you are a Canadian too.
Yes, he's fellow Canadian. He was forced out of Iran by the Shah after the fall of the Shah of Iran, and he moved to Canada, and he started a business in real estate. And there were 3 or 4 brothers, and they were adamant about everything they did was by the book. And they never wanted, every deal had to be very straight. And they built one of the biggest real estate companies in Canada. And then they moved to the States. They built the mall in
Mall of America. Yeah.
Mall of America. And I think they were involved in the second Mall of America in New Jersey. Yeah. So these guys, they showed up as upstanding people because they understood that they had a responsibility as Orthodox people to create a flow of pure consciousness in the world. And they exemplified that. They took it to the extreme. And another great example is another Canadian is Reichman, the Reichman family, another real estate family. So Albert Reichman, who passed away recently, I just read a story that he wrote in his will. He gave the lawyers 2 envelopes, one for before the funeral and one for after. And in his will, he wrote out, who gets what and what. And then at the last line, he says, I want to be buried in my favorite tie. So according to Jewish tradition, you cannot be buried with anything on. You have to go like you came, in a white shroud and just in the ground, right? So they went to all these rabbis and they were like, what do we do? He wants to be, and all the rabbis said the same thing. You cannot bury him with his tie. And they felt terrible. This was a last testament from our father. What are we going to do? So he, after the funeral, the lawyer gave them the second envelope. And he wrote there, he says, I know you went and asked all the rabbis around the world if I can be buried with my tie. And they said no. And you listened. The lesson is that all our wealth is worth nothing because we go back, we can't even take our favorite tie. So that was his sort of message. And they also lived with that, a beautiful, honest integrity.
Yeah. That's cool. I love that story. And a story I want to share about Don Gurmezian. He's done several videos for the Via Main channel, which is all about Shmirat Einayim, which is guarding the eyes, protecting the eyes. So when your eyes are your windows to your soul, right? So if you are watching inappropriate stuff, if you allow yourself to ogle women, if you are even just watching dark, dystopian, violent TV shows and things like that, you're not maintaining a high vibration, and you get more interference. Right? You're tuning into the wrong kind of radio station. So if you're kind of thinking of yourself as a radio or a FM tuner, an antenna, you are tuning in to low quality shows, low quality stations on that FM tuner, and you could be getting that intuition, the seeing around corners kind of guidance, but it's clouded. And so there's so many great stories that Don shares that are like paranormal, I'd say, even or extrasensory or miraculous, like beyond reality, like glitch in the matrix type moments that he is willing to share, which is kind of unusual because you get judged for that stuff. If you put it out there, people will heckle you or ridicule you or whatever. But he's really got some incredible stories that he shares.
So a lot, just along those lines, it's interesting that people who know me, they're always asking me, when am I going on a plane? And the reason they do that is because every single time I go on a plane, I have this crazy story that only happens to me. Like I'll meet a pastor and we'll sit on the plane and we'll have this crazy conversation and something will happen from that conversation. Or I'll lose a suitcase and then some crazy story will happen from the suitcase. And every time I fly, something else happens. And they're like, nothing ever happens to us. You're lying, or what are you talking about? And I'm like, I don't know. I think you just have to be open and things happen. Divine providence is out there. It's just a question of, like you said, tapping into the frequency and opening your eyes and allowing yourself to be. And then it happens, right? So I'm a big believer of that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So rather than share the stories from Don, I'm going to include in the show notes for this episode like 2 or 3 videos. They're pretty short, but they're powerful. Definitely worth listening to. So if you, the listener, are intrigued, definitely check out the show notes for this episode. So let's talk about some of the upcoming trends that you're seeing or you expect to see in regards to marketing and AI and technology just generally. What are you seeing in terms of conversion and traffic generation and how people use the internet, et cetera?
So I think, what we witnessed in the beginning where a small player can unsettle the bigger player, Amazon can unsettle Walmart. And I mean, that's in the big picture, but, companies like Gymshark, sort of messing with Lululemon or, the small makeup company, getting movement with regards to Sephora and all that stuff that's going on. I think now that's being amplified. But the thing that these younger brands, what they know how to do is they know how to utilize TikTok and Instagram for their benefit. But long living brands they don't have that recipe. And I think this sort of like huge, I think what's his name speaks about it. Seth Godin speaks about, you have the beginning boost and then you have the gap.
He calls it the dip. Yes, he's got a book called The Dip.
The dip, yeah. Yeah. So it's mining the gap, right? I think the longevity of these companies is going to prove that building a real brand is what it's all about. So customer acquisition is low today, but customer retention is going to become the key in the future. That's my feeling. So when we have these memes and these, all these TikTok artists and all this buzz that 15 minutes, it's interesting. I had this crazy interaction yesterday. I'm interviewing someone to run our social media, and this girl comes in. She's young, personable, smart, and she had 600,000 followers on all her platforms. And I'm like, so why are you coming to work for me? Like, what's wrong with your sort of influencer world that you're in? She goes, first of all, it's exhausting, right? I'm always having to post. And second of all, it's not consistent, right? I don't have enough, sponsors and stuff like that. So 1 month I'll make a lot, 1 month I won't. But I think the third thing she said was the most important. She said, the brands that I'm dealing with are not around a few weeks later or months later or years later. So as an influencer, my customer base of clients is not consistent. So how the rules of creating a true brand that outlasts, I mean, we're seeing a lot when you had these pure plays that went online and then decided that they're going to go offline, and a lot of them went out of business because even though they had a brand, but it was the expense of the LTV, lifetime value of the customer, that they didn't really tap into because they were so focused on customer acquisition. And I think that's an interesting lesson for the future.
Did you end up hiring her?
I think I will.
Okay.
My only worry is that she's going to be gone after a year, but whatever. That's my challenge of longevity in this position.
Well, there's no longevity, like certainty doesn't exist. That's one of the things I learned in Kabbalah class, is that there is no such thing as certainty in this realm, in this physical world. The only certainty we can get is from upper worlds, and those are kind of gifted down to us if we merit it. But this, by design, is a world of uncertainty. So
correct.
Yeah. Now, if you do hire her, oh, by the way, this is a great little test I learned from a friend of mine I met in a mastermind, Sam Zertok, and so I want to give him credit for that. It's called the honesty test, and it's a great interview question. So I don't know if you asked something along these lines or not, but maybe in a second interview do that with her. So the idea is here you give 5 different attributes or so for the job, and you ask them to pick the one that they think is the most important and relevant to the position. Okay. So, and because it's called the honesty test, the answer, the only right answer is honesty. So you could say technical acumen, creativity, dedication, attention to detail, whatever, right? So all the other ones don't matter. It's the honesty one that you throw in there at some point in the 5, and then if they don't give you the honesty answer, or if they don't give honesty as the answer, then they failed that test, and that's a big warning sign, right? So if they think that, I'm going to be a personal assistant to Stephan, so I better say attention to detail because I don't want to miss anything and then cost my boss an opportunity or client or whatever. So attention to detail. Oops, that's a problem because you can't infuse somebody with honesty. They come with it as a core value, and no talking to them is going to make them honest if they aren't already wired that way. Whereas you can teach somebody to be more technically adept, or you could teach them to be more creative. What do you think about that?
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a bit about. I know we're getting close to time here, so let's talk a bit about favorite books and I don't know, thought leaders and mentors and different kinds of resources. Could be documentaries. What are some of the most influential sources of wisdom? And I know we were talking before the recording about a book.
Yeah. So I just have the book right here. I'm actually reading it as we speak. It's called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. I really I'm enjoying it. I don't know if it's for all listeners, but it's definitely for listeners in our age demographic. It's about reinventing yourself in the second trimester of your life. So I like that a lot. It's very inspiring to sort of rejig how one views themselves. And he starts the book off with a story of this couple he overhears, who he recognizes, the man, very powerful entrepreneur, very successful all his life, and he's in his 80s, and he hears his wife tell him on the plane that, you are worth it, even though you retired, you're still great. And that's what inspired him to write the book. What happens to someone who has been so successful? How do you sort of pivot in the second stage of your life or the third stage of your life to keep the meaning there and purpose? So I think that for me has been really interesting. Instead of getting the red car, as the meaning, right? The Corvette, is that what?
Right. So the midlife crisis sports car purchase, right? So what are you specifically, from a practical standpoint, applying from that book in your life and business, and maybe even in your clients' businesses?
So from my perspective, I love what he talks about, and I think that I'm implementing that a lot, is that we have acquired knowledge. I'm 54. I've acquired knowledge. I've been a student of life. I've listened to a lot of smart people, and that knowledge is valuable. And I have made it now my mandate to share that, right? To become a teacher. And we spoke about this in the beginning, but this idea that we need to share and teach the next generation, or those who are willing to listen. I think the next generation doesn't listen a lot. They shout a lot. There's a lot of shouting happening with no listening. So that for me has become, one of the things that I've been focusing on. And then again, also shifting how we view ourselves from a successful perspective. What is success, right? So success before was to build a business. Success before was to amplify your speaking platform, to become successful based on other people's descriptions or criteria for success. And I think rewriting that and then putting on that lens on how you view yourself is, I think, super important.
Yeah. Just, when we live in an upside down world, right? So that's something that you learn in Kabbalah, that the people at the top are actually at the bottom rungs and vice versa. And when you're talking about success, I was like, what are some of the ways that I would view success in this lifetime, zoomed out from a higher perspective? And the example that came to my mind was this one homeless lady was sitting on a bus bench. I was going like 35 miles an hour down the street, and she caught my eye. and I just had this intuitive feeling that I needed to give her money. So I had my family in the car. I managed to pull over and get into a parking lot and then go and walk up to her and give her money. And when she smiled at me, she had one tooth, and she smiled such a beaming smile. I knew this woman was actually like an angel and that this was a test. And I just passed it. It would have been so easy to just fly past. Like, I can't, like, what? Like, I'm going 35 miles an hour and this is a busy intersection. And like, what do you want from me? No, but I did it. And it's those moments. That's the real juice.
Agreed. So that's one of the things I'm doing now. Another thing I'm looking at, I'm reading a lot of Patterson, who's unbelievable. He the art of the war of the art of war, the war of art, something like that.
It's the war of art. Yeah, the art of war is by Sun Tzu. Yeah,
The war,
which is also a great book.
yeah,
But
yes.
Stephen Pressfield is the author of The War of Art.
Pressfield, there you go, Pressfield. Yeah, love that book. I gave it to a bunch of people, and I'm actually reading a really good book. Maybe your readers won't be interested, but maybe you might be interested. It's called The Shochet. It's a book about. It's a biography a self biography of a person who grew up in Russia or maybe in the Ukraine in the late 1800s, early 19th century, 20th century, and he writes about life, but he writes about it with such clarity and beauty and color, and the reason I'm enjoying it is because you never get to read a biography of a person who is not successful in the traditional sense, right? He was poor all his life. He was in poverty. He had challenges. And generally, when you read stories like that, they have great endings and they are novels, but you never read a biography of someone who actually is writing about himself. And there's no silver lining. He finds the silver lining every single time. And it's a beautiful story for me, but that's just what I'm reading.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And then any kind of thought leaders or documentaries or anything that you want to point out as really good stuff to check out?
Nothing stands out now, but I'm constantly listening to different. I'm sort of like listening to different podcasts and always trying to get a deeper understanding of certain subjects. So that for me is like always, creating an empty vessel to learn something that I don't know anything about. So finding a podcast that talks about specific science that I have no understanding and trying to get it, or and what I found is there's so many subcultures that, like for instance, I've become now a coffee snob. I don't like to brag about it, but so I bought myself a machine that is like a personal barista machine with a special grinder, and I go to specialty shops where they roast their own beans and comes from a specific. And this all started during COVID when I was stuck at home, so I needed a passion. But now I listen to podcasts and YouTubes on coffee making, and it's so powerful for me to believe that there's such a huge subculture of people who are into coffee, and it's just one thing. Now you can have that across the board, and if you want to go deep into anything, you have the ability to do that today, and I find that fascinating.
Yeah, Yeah, something that Gary V recommends, Gary Vaynerchuk, is to uh, go after random type topics that you want to double click on and create content around just because you're passionate about it. You've figured out something about, I don't know, peanuts or whatever, and you're like, wow, this is so cool. And you create a video about it. And it doesn't have to be about your industry. It doesn't have to be about the main theme of what you normally shoot videos about. This is a different world we live in where algorithms can decide whether you get reach even if your social network is zero. Like, so you can start a new TikTok account and get a viral video within days without any reach that you would have relied on in the past. Yeah, it's a great equalizer, but it also.
And I heard a very interesting fact yesterday. I had a call with one of my customers yesterday, Macy's, and we were talking about the Macy's Day Parade. And she was sharing all these facts, like when it started, and and then she said something very wild. She said that if a balloon busts and it lands on your property and you bring it back to Macy's, they'll give you $100. And I was like, because she said sometimes it ends up in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, like they have crazy places where the balloon landed. And if you bring it back, you get whatever. So I thought that was a very funny fact.
Okay, cool. All right. So what are we going to leave our listener or viewer with as far as like an actionable takeaway that they can apply today or tomorrow?
Listen to the numbers. That's all I can say. That's my message. My message is we can build brands that have longevity if we're willing to put the time in and analyze the right things that bring us to the promised land, in your case. So how do we do that? Right? We have all the analytical tools that are out there that give us insight, and then reading those into the tea leaves to figure out what is the important ones. How do we optimize each stage of the funnel to get the best results?
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your amazing journey and all sorts of wisdom nuggets. If our listener or viewer wants to potentially work with you, learn from you, work for you, where do they get in touch? How do they find you?
They can find me at Pinny, Pinny, at Delmar, Delmar, Intl, international.ca. So delmarintl.ca.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Penny. And thank you, listener. Go out there and make the world a better place. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to hear more insights on e-commerce strategy and data-driven marketing, then I recommend episode 266 with Bernadine Wu, episode 427 with Graham Robbins, and episode 507 with Greg Merrilees. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Pinny Gniwisch at marketingspeak.com/533. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share the episode and, more importantly, the entire show Marketing Speak with a friend. It'll really help this podcast grow in reach and impact. Thank you.